Okay, here we go. Welcome to today's Go webinar. And today it kicks off our series featuring Yukon government researchers and collaborators. So we are hosting this talk with respect and gratitude on the traditional territory of the Kwalindun First Nation and Tanquachon Council. My name is Monique Chatterton, and I am the Science Policy Advisor. I work with the Office of the Science Advisor for the Yukon government, and I work with Sabrina Kinsella, the Acting Science Advisor. So I'm very pleased to introduce our speaker for today, Nazreen Golzadeh, who will be giving a talk on Mitacs programs and funding models. So let me introduce you all to Nazreen. So Nazreen is Mitacs Business Development Director. She received her master's degree in environmental sciences from Université du Québec à Montréal in 2014. She completed her PhD at McGill University in toxicology. She conducted a community-led research on concentrations of contaminants and nutrients in traditional foods of a First Nation community in Alberta. And having worked in both academic and industrial settings for over 12 years, in the energy sector and environmental sciences and management, she'll make a significant contribution to building relationships and fostering research to find solutions to industry-specific problems and to participate in the economic growth of the Yukon. So I will turn the floor over to Nazreen. Thank you so much, Nazreen.
Well, thank you so much, Monique. And hi, everyone. Thank you for having me today. So before I start this talk, I'd like to thank the Government of Canada and the Government of Yukon for their support. Well, Monique already introduced me, so my name is Nazreen. I'm the Director of Business Development for Mitacs. Actually, this is the first time Mitacs hired someone full-time on the ground to support Mitacs projects in Yukon. And yeah, I got my master's degree from UQAM and a PhD from McGill University. So for today's agenda is I'm going to explain what Mitacs is and go through program overviews and explain Mitacs internship models and also how to become our partner. And I'll go through a couple of examples of previously funded projects as well. So Mitacs is a national non-for-profit organization that funds collaborative research between academia and industry. Mitacs is a national research organization that positions Canada as a global innovation leader and also builds effective academic and industry partnership, as we have partnered with a lot of Canadian and international institutions, and also train the next generation of workforce. As you can see in this map, shows that Mitacs has collaborated with almost all institutions and universities in almost all Canadian provinces. So Mitacs has this expertise since Mitacs has been in operation for over 20 years and partners with over 117 post-secondary partners, with over 6,000 company partners, and also funded over 16 research projects. And as I mentioned, we have different representatives in different institutions, Canadian institutions, from college to universities. So what kind of collaborations are supported by Mitacs? So Mitacs support Canadian industry and academia, and also international industry and academia, meaning that if we have a Canadian students want to travel abroad, go to a very specific lab somewhere in Europe to learn a specific device in their lab or a specific equipment and do their analysis, Mitacs would support that project. We also bring in top international students to Canada to work with industries and also in academic settings as well. So our program objectives is that we have a very high acceptance rate in most of our programs. Some of our programs, such as Accelerate, which is a research-based program, we have over 95% acceptance rate. It also it also increases professional opportunities for students and researchers. Let's say as students, before they complete their degrees, they have a chance to be exposed to real life issues by working with organizations and institutions. We support flexible and collaborative research initiatives, meaning that we support all disciplines and fields. So there is no limit in fields and disciplines and projects that we support. We support art projects, STEM projects, engineering projects, and the list goes on. So our collaborative innovation model, we always have 3 partners. One is academia. We need a supervisor to supervise the student to make sure the project is moving forward smoothly. And as students, we support college and undergrad and graduate and postdoc students. They could, excuse me, they could do the internship full-time or part-time, depends on if they have a course-based coursework to do or not. We partner with organizations as well. So we have private sector, small and medium-sized and large businesses. We also partner with non-for-profit organizations, hospitals, and municipalities. So for non-for-profit organization, there is a vetting process at Mitacs. If you are a non-for-profit and would like to apply for Mitacs program, please reach out to me, and then I'll make sure that I have in the information and send it to our vetting department at Mitacs, and we will go through some information to make sure that you're eligible to apply for Mitacs fundings. So as I mentioned, we have several programs, but 2 of our main programs I'm going to explain today. One of them is research-based called Accelerate, and the other one is innovation-based program that we call it Business Strategy Internship. So you may want to know what the difference is between Accelerate and Business Strategy Internship program. Accelerate is heavy research-based, meaning that we need a student and researcher or a group of researchers to work on a project. And the outcome of that project may have broad benefits and applications, and also may serve a broader audience, such as other researchers as well. Whereas for the business strategy internship, we hire students to work on a specific issue or challenge that an organization is facing, and the outcome of that project may only be used by the partner organization. Usually when researchers work on a heavy research-based projects and Accelerate program, they intend to publish their results and present in conferences, but publications may not occur when a student is doing a business strategy internship. So going through details of Mitacs Accelerate program is actually a collaborative research between Canadian and international researchers, and also companies, including non-for-profits. Our funding models are 10K and 15K. An internship unit can last between 4 to 6 months. Again, depends if the student can put full-time work into that project or part-time work into that project. So our cost sharing structure is 1-to-1, meaning that the partner will put half of their stipend of that student, and Mitacs will match the rest of it. And the great point about Mitacs program, especially Accelerate program, is that they're not competitive, and you can apply to those programs, to Accelerate program anytime, and it's open to all fields and disciplines. Business strategy internship program is almost the same as Accelerate program. The award is valued at either 10K or 15K for each internship unit that lasts between 4 to 6 months. And it's open to all businesses, including non-for-profit organizations. Partner would pay half of their stipend of the student, and then Mitacs matches the rest. And applications are accepted at any time. And basically, they're not competitive. Students from college to graduate studies could apply to business strategy internship program as well. So what's the process of applying for Mitacs funding is that the first thing we talk to companies to make sure we understand the project they have in mind. And then we go through our institutions and find a student with the skill set the company needs to tackle the challenges and issues. And we also find an academic supervisor to supervise the project and the student. And then depends on what program, which program you choose, there's always an application form to fill out. And after the application form is filled out, a company and organization will send it to a Mitacs representative, and we review that application and we return it in case we need to change and edit that application. And then we submit the application to Mitacs. There's always a review process for both Accelerate and Business Strategy Internship. Business Strategy Internship has a shorter review process because it's not as research heavy project. But for Accelerate program, which is a research heavy based program, we are looking at 12 to 15 weeks of review process. So please note that before applying for any Accelerate or BSI project, that you need to wait for a couple of weeks to get the answers and approval. And after the projects are reviewed by peer reviewers externally and internally, the award letter is sent to the institution and also to the company and the intern. And when the award letter is issued, the intern has 12 months to actually start the project. So when I talk about Mitacs internship units, I always put it as a building block. So if an organization want to tackle a very complex issues, they can start with one internship project for a specific problem or issues they have at their organizational level. And one internship unit lasts between 4 to 6 months. And intern should spend the minimum 25% of their time at the partner organization and 25% or more at the academic setting. So I mentioned that we have 10K or 15K award, meaning that if in both cases, 10K goes towards the stipend, the students' stipend. So for example, if a company chooses to pay 15K, and chooses to pay this model, to choose this model, they pay 7,500. Mitacs will pay the rest. And if they want to have some sort of lab work and they need some lab equipment, we can give 10K to the student and use 5K towards Flex Fund. And if, as I mentioned, if there is any need to purchase any lab equipment or if the student would do some field work. So
can I ask a question, or do you want to wait to the end for questions?
It would be great if we could ask questions at the end of the presentation, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you. Fine. Thank you so much. So yeah, Mitacs internship units are basically, as I mentioned, we see each internship unit as a building block. Let's say you have a very long project. You can build multi-month or multi-year project by using Mitacs fundings. So, and we could also bring in different researchers from different universities to work with you on those projects. So by doing that, we actually, by building a bigger project, we tackle more complex issues and achieve longer term goals. So you may be curious to know what the limit is in terms of number of internship units each intern can do. Well, I would say that depends on the student's level of studies. For example, if we have an undergrad and recent grad students, they could do up to 3 units, meaning 3 to 4 to 6 month internship units. If you have a longer project and you want a master's students to work on that, we support up to 4 units, for PhDs up to 8, and for postdoc up to 9 units. So this is really important to keep in mind that you can think big and also break down the projects to smaller projects and use different expertise in different universities with different skill sets to actually tackle those issues at your organization. So Mitacs process, Mitacs funding cycle is that the partner organization will pay the funding to Mitacs. Mitacs matches that funding and send it to the academic institutions. Usually the fundings goes to Office of Research Services, and then the Office of Research Services, they will pay the students as the stipend, however, based on their rules and regulations. So each university have their specific rules that they follow. So at Mitacs, we value equity, diversity, and inclusion, and we have a strong EDI team. The purpose of this policy in Mitacs is to promote and foster inclusivity and diversity, as we believe equity removes barrier while inclusion fosters safety and belongings within and across the organization. We also have Indigenous initiatives in Mitacs, because Mitacs is committed to work in partnership with Indigenous communities and people. So we understand that previously and historically research was done on Indigenous people and not for Indigenous people, and we're here and committed to listening, learning, and co-creating. So over the next couple of slides, I'm going to go through examples of project funded by Yukon and federal government through Mitacs internships, just to give you an example of the importance and the impacts of those projects in the Yukon. So one of the cool projects that a very small Whitehorse-based company called Balanced Biogas partnered with Mitacs and you leverage Mitacs fundings and used expertise of a Yukon undergrad students to actually develop a one-of-a-kind economic feasibility model to assess the feasibility of a small-scale anaerobic digestion and technology in Yukon. So what this company basically does, they have this, they built an anaerobic digestion system, meaning that they compose organic materials by using microorganisms. And by using microorganisms, the byproduct of this process is methane, a greenhouse gas that usually is released to the environment. And as we know, there is environmental issues with methane being released in the environment. So they found a way to actually use this byproduct and generate some heat and electricity instead of releasing this to the environment. So their process is actually to produce renewable energy in Yukon. And the student helped them to create this economic model to predict the cost of implementing this biodigester at a particular site, which is a great example of a small business using Mitacs fundings. The other cool project is that Dr. Guillaume Nielsen has a very strong environmental sciences background and lab in at Yukon University. And recently they have partnered with Minto Mines, again, leveraging Mitacs fundings to use a very not invasive process and not invasive method and technology to actually clean up nitrate pollutions from mining sites. So they basically brought a microscopic solution to a big problem by using local bacteria to clean up nitrate pollution at mine sites. And as we know, nitrate pollution can have negative consequences in the aquatic ecosystems and also human health. And what they did, they actually used an environmental friendly, more sustainable method for nitrate pollution cleanup for mining site here in Yukon. A very great example of food insecurity project in Yukon is that Dr. Sarah McCree-Noyles partnered with Food Banks Canada and used Mitacs funding to actually see what are the appropriate role of Whitehorse Food Bank in addressing food insecurity needs in Yukon communities, especially during the COVID. So they interviewed remote communities and they analyzed the data, and they are actually writing a report summarizing their fundings and recommendations that they will be sending to food banks, and food bank would use this to change their operations. And as we know, food insecurity has long been a concern in Canada, Canada's north especially. So food security in Yukon is the third highest in Canada. So this is a very great project, a great example of that. You know, a group of researchers are working, and this is a still ongoing project. So the results will help better understand the food insecurity in remote communities in Yukon. a great project that shows collaborative research between Carleton University and Natchonian Development Corporation, the First Nation community here in Yukon, is the assessment of community economy and food distribution within the First Nation community. So this is a very new project that just started. And the impact of this project is that we always advocate for braiding science with traditional knowledge. And this is an example of this collaboration that researchers and the First Nation community are actually working on a First Nation community-led project and hopefully to co-create knowledge. Future collaborations that I have actually spoke with Dr. Michael Ross in his lab. So Dr. Michael Ross works at Yukon University's Northern Energy Innovation Research Program. That is a very strong center to bring in more renewable energy to remote communities and basically make them provide more energy through renewable resources for them to be more sustainable. As we know, it's really hard to get, this is a very challenging issue for remote communities. So again, in a nutshell, what we do, we identify the best expertise to address your business challenges, and we also have connections, and we look for the best skills that fits your need. And we source by bringing this, and by actually leveraging Mitacs funding, you can also tap into our national network. And we not only find the students with the right skill sets for you, but we also help financial support, meaning that we pay half of the stipend of that student while they're actually working for you. So this is my contact information, my LinkedIn. Please feel free to contact me. I will be happy to have a one-on-one sessions with you to go through details of our programs. And with that, I want to thank you for listening to this presentation and also thank our funders. And I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nazreen. That was a great presentation. So yeah, we can open the floor for questions and discussion. So just a gentle reminder to please keep yourself on mute when you're not speaking. If you have a question, you can raise your hand in your video, or you can indicate you have a question with your reaction button in Zoom. Or if you would prefer I read your question out loud, you can also type it into the chat. I can read it for you. So just opening the floor for questions. Oh, I can start. Actually, there was just a request, Nazreen, asking if you could please go back to the second last slide with your contact info. So, perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, and any questions? I think, Jeff, was that you had a question initially?
I did. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Do you mind going back to the slide where you had that like $15,000 example?
Sure. Yep.
Some understanding is you work on the basis of like units,
Right. Yes, that is correct. So, excuse me. So you imagine you have a project in mind and you want to start an internship unit with Mitacs. So you apply for one internship unit, and that internship unit basically lasts between 4 to 6 months. And you choose to go with the 15K model. Right. And then if you choose that, then you pay, as an organization will pay $7,500. Half of that half of the stipend of the student comes from the partner organization, and Mitacs will match the rest.
And is this a standard amount, or is it like minimum?
Yes, our sharing cost sharing structure is 1-to-1 usually, so that's a standard we have, and you could choose to pay the students 10K or 15K. Of course, the supervisor will play a role here as well. But yeah, right now
And
we
in
have.
that case, if your organization, if our organization put in 10K, that means that Mitacs would also put in 10K? Is that?
Yes, if you want one internship unit and you want to only pay 10K, you will put 7,000. Sorry, you will put 5,000 $5,000, and Mitacs will matches that as well.
So the amount per unit is there.
Yes,
Like
the
it's
amount
not
per
just-
unit. Mhm. That is correct. The amount per unit could be 10K or 15K. And whatever you choose to go with, you pay only half of that amount, and Mitacs will pay the rest.
For clarity, it says 25% of their time they spend at the partner organization. We've come up with this project idea, we've got Mitacs approved, et cetera, et cetera. They're gonna spend, 1 out of every 4 days at a company, at the partner organization. Is the student to be working on their project while at the company, or is that kind of like they are there to just work on, whatever kind of whatever projects the company would use their help on, completely not related to the research project?
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So it all depends on the agreement between the supervisor and an organization, the partner organization, and also if the student have some coursework to do. So if they do, they could always postpone starting the internship, because as I mentioned, when you apply for an internship unit and you get the award letter, you have 1 year to start that project. So if the student has some coursework and they want to finish the coursework first and then start the internship, they could do that. Or if an organization and a supervisor is okay for that student to work part-time while attending the courses, they can do that as well.
Okay, and so then am I to understand then that this is, for example, understanding the numbers are different, or the numbers can be whatever they are needed for the individual project, but that this would be renewed every kind of, or do we do it all at once? Say you have found an idea and it's going to be a master-student partnership. You said, that's 4 to 6 units. Is this kind of all done up front? So say you're doing $15,000 per unit, which means the industry partner is $7.5K, and let's say we're doing 6 units. So is that basically like, do we pay 7,500 times 6, like $45,000 up front for the 2 years, or is it kind of, what I'm getting at?
Yes, that is a great question, Jeff. And well, basically, if you want to apply for 4, 6, or more internship units, you get the award letter and you are invoiced before each internship unit starts. So what I suggest is that you apply for as many as internship units you have in mind, just because of the review process, right? And because that will be one project, but a long project. So you will apply for the whole internship, you will apply for the whole internship units that you have in mind, but you are invoiced for each internship unit. You won't pay like for 5 internship units upfront.
Got it. Okay, so you're more or less invoiced for like on a unit basis.
Right. That is correct. I hope that answers your question, Jeff.
Well, that does. Can you go to the next slide? Sorry, I have.
This one?
Actually, maybe it's the one where you had kind of
Numbers?
Flows. Oh, it's how you had the money flows, like Mitacs and the academic institution. It's kind of a circular flow.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Got it. Thank you. That was clear. Okay. So the funding cycle, right? Okay. Here.
That's the one. So,
Awesome.
so this is so the contributions and the combined contributions of the partner organization and Mitacs needs to be sufficient to cover not only the student stipend, but also project related expenses. Like if they have field work or whatever equipment, that would need to be kind of rolled into how much would need to be provided in total.
Yes, that is correct. But I have to mention that 10K is the base. 10K directly goes as the student stipend, but we have 5,000K as flex fund if you need it. If a student needs it, a university needs it, or the project needs it. And if it's not needed, and let's say the student gonna come in Yukon and working because of higher cost of living, and the company agrees to pay 15K, then the 15K could directly go to a student as their stipend.
All right, I'll stop asking questions because I see Brendan's got his hand up.
Thank you, Jeff. Those were great questions.
Well, I don't want to interrupt that. My questions are separate. So if there's more on that topic, I can wait. I just wanted to get in the queue.
No, I'm done. I'm all good.
Okay, thank you. Well, yeah, thanks for the presentation. I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, and I don't know if these are questions for Nazreen or Monique or someone else, but I'll just throw a few things out there and see what develops. Basically, so I work for Water Resources branch of the Department of Environment in YG, and we benefited from a Mitacs partnership a few years ago with a postdoc at UBC who was doing work up here. So we were funding that part of that project, and then the postdoc ended up getting Mitacs to work with a environmental consultant and do some work, and it was quite beneficial. Long story short, I'm going to be starting some work probably next year that'll go on for a couple of years, and I see the benefit of the contractor who I intend to work with, and we haven't contracted anybody yet, but them having a Mitacs student on board. So I guess what I'm wondering is, like, are there examples of this, or is it possible that we could, like the Yukon, I understand Yukon government not to be an eligible partner, but could we require in a contract of environmental consultant, for example, that they take on a Mitacs student, and that part of the contract, I guess, effectively transfers them the funding to contribute to that? Is that a possibility? Yeah, that's my first question.
That's a great question. Thank you for mentioning. Yes, because we're getting our fundings from Yukon government and provincial and federal government. Unfortunately, the government is not eligible. But what we could do, we could have a partner, as you mentioned, a consulting firm, right? So we always have to have this three partner: a student, a supervisor to supervise the student from the home university, and a partner organization. So yes, if we could go through a consulting company, I would say there is a chance that we could make that project work.
Okay, so yeah, there'd be a consultant. Monique, I don't know, just from your view or others, like, would there be some issue with that? Imagine that contract stipulation that just says you must take on this Mitacs student, and part of the disbursement of funds from us to the contractor would include the money that they would contribute for this Mitacs, to leverage the Mitacs partnership.
Yeah, I'll see. Sabrina, do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, so we have had funding agreements that included funding specifically for Mitacs internship. Not exactly the scenario you're describing, but I see it as a possibility. I think the challenge may be having a backup plan in case you weren't able to identify the right student and or supervisor through Mitacs. So you just want to have an out written in there, but I see no reason you couldn't build that in.
Okay, yeah, I'm just wondering because, I mean, one option is you get your contractor, and then later you try to just mount this Mitacs on top of it, but that seems like a bit of a surprise to them at that point, right? Whereas if it could just be built into like an RFP that, oh, this project's going to involve it insofar as possible, maybe there's some caveats and conditions around that, but taking on a Mitacs student, which I hope they would see as an advantage, because they get this high quality, like highly qualified personnel at a very low cost, or maybe no cost to them. But yeah, I just wonder if we could build that into an RFP, say, and have whoever, because I don't know who I'm going to be working with on the work I'm speaking about here, but once we know, like, so if I knew, then we would get this rolling. But it'd be nice to kind of have this already simmering in the background before we have someone contracted. Then as soon as we do, we could jump on this, because I guess there's some delay, right, from the review period to get someone from Mitacs, and you also have to identify, as you said, the partners.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think that that would be possible to include in the RFP itself. And then it does give people that early signal that in addition to the work itself, they'll be supervising a student. But as you say, I think in most cases, they're going to see that as a benefit. I'll stop talking.
Thank you, Sabrina. That was great information.
Yeah, it's all helpful. I might have more questions offline in the coming months or whatever, but I appreciate this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Brendan, and thanks for your input, Sabrina. So, Bob, would you like to go with your question?
Sure. Initial question. Does the academic institution charge an admin fee for handling the money? So you're not looking really at, say, 15K, but 15K minus 15% for an admin fee by the academic institution?
That's a great question. So Mitacs doesn't support that, from this 10K or 15K, overhead costs will be deducted. But that I should say that some universities, they have some rules and regulations that they follow. So it all depends on which university we're going to collaborate with and what rules they follow. But Mitacs doesn't support that. So the full stipend should be used towards a project.
Okay, so I guess you're incumbent to check with the academic institution as the sort of partner organization to understand before you submit what the amount would be.
That is correct.
And sort of looking at that diagram as well, it seems that the academic institution is taking care of paying the stipend and taking care of the project-related expenses directly. So the partner organization isn't involved in that financial side?
That is correct. Because the interns are not your employee. I mean, someone is employee, they're just a student and they get paid by the university.
Okay, but does the partner organization then do timesheets or something to the academic institution to ensure that that 25% is covered?
It all comes down to the universities and their rules. But what we suggest is that to have a very clear and upfront conversation with this academic supervisor, because the academic supervisor and the intern are the two partners you will be interacting with the most. And it all comes down to the agreements between the university and an organization supervisor and the intern. So Mitacs doesn't stipulate.
Okay. And those are my questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Bob. Those were great questions.
Desiree, maybe just building off of Bob's question about the university administrative costs, which is not part of what Mitacs and the partner organization are covering. And I've heard this from academic institutions that this is a bit of a concern, but it's a thing that we need to think about. You have an example in the past. Have you seen partner organizations kind of have separate agreements with the academic institutions to cover some of those administrative costs? Is that a model you've seen before?
That's a very good question, Jeff. I think UBC, some departments at UBC, they do have some sort of like overhead cost, but that is outside the scope of Mitacs funding. So what companies do usually, they talk to the Office of Research and they agree on the percentage and they top up the stipend, the top of the model. For example, if you choose a 10K model and they want I don't know, like 10% overhead. That's a number. I have no idea how much that is, but the company will pay extra on top of the 10K to the institution because we don't want the money that is funded for a project, we don't want that to go towards overhead costs. We want that money to be spent on a project.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks for those questions. I have a question too. Nazreen, so your examples, so you're showing how partnerships between academics and industry, nonprofits, other sectors, they can help answer research questions that inform that industry and other sectors and help with future planning. Can you talk a little bit about the role that provincial and territorial governments play in supporting these partnerships?
This is a great question, Monique. I think provincial and territorial governments and their funding is really, really needed in terms of Mitacs leveraging government funds. And we really appreciate Yukon government's support, because this is actually how we bring in impactful projects, as I mentioned during those couple of examples in the Yukon. And also I personally appreciate and thank you for managing and this event, and that actually helped Mitacs to actually talk to key stakeholders and introduce the program. So thank you so much for the support that the government provides for us.
You're welcome. Our pleasure. It's good to create these opportunities for people to learn more. So just a follow-up question on that. So Yukon government has contributed funding on 2 agreements with Mitacs. So one of them supported internships that were specifically aimed at addressing pandemic-related issues. And looking at the pandemic-related business needs for businesses and nonprofit organizations in the Yukon. Can you talk about this ability to target specific themes? Is this something that you see in other jurisdictions?
Right, this is another good question, Monique. Thank you for that. Yes, so some provincial government, they want us to work on and focus on specific top priorities. For example, the BC government want us to prioritize clean tech or emergency management, whereas like the Alberta government want us to prioritize agriculture and forestry sector, and also they want us to prioritize aerospace. So it all varies, but we make sure we work closely with the provincial and territorial government to ensure that we focus our projects on their priorities. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Great, awesome.
I just noticed there's a question in the chat. So someone is asking if we might be able to Yukon Chamber of Mines is asking, might we be able to receive a link to the recording of this presentation? And I can actually answer that. So I have recorded this presentation, and so I will be creating a YouTube channel, and then I will post that onto we have a Facebook page, Scope Facebook page, and also I'll be sharing that link through the Scope newsletter. So if you're not signed up for the Scope, I assume you are signed up to one of those, and that's how you found out about this event. But if you are not, I can send you, I could put my email in here right now. So if anyone needs to, they can contact me to get set up for that. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. I guess going once, twice. Okay. I think that's that's probably it. Thank you so much, Nazreen. That was a really great presentation and discussion, and thank you everyone for joining today and making for a really great discussion. I think maybe I'll let folks know we have some other talks coming up people might be interested in. Nazreen, if you want to stop sharing your screen, I can share.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. I'm just going to stop sharing. And thank you so much for great questions, everyone.
So, okay. Okay, so that's just a, we have some other upcoming talks with this series over the next 4 weeks, and we may be adding some more as well. So I just wanted to post that here so you can take a moment to have a look and see if there's something that interests you. And I'll be sending out the links through the Scope newsletter and the Facebook page like I have been. So make note of those in your calendar if you're interested. I think that's it. Any other questions or comments before we sign off? Okay, thank you so much again, Nazreen. That was wonderful, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.